You have Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz and Visa Franchise. Excited to have on Nick Anthony Zamucen, who's the founder of Best Option Restoration, also known as B.O.R. Nick Anthony, thanks for joining.
Hey, Patrick, I appreciate you having me on, man.
So you have a lengthy track record of entrepreneurship as well as in the recent decade in the franchising space. Could you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial background, especially related to franchising?
Sure. I mean, this is my Best Option Restoration, or we just call it B.O.R, make it easy, is my fourth franchised organization. We have, I've had a non-medical franchise, non-medical home care franchise, a pizza franchise, bio franchise, and now Best Option Restoration. So, I kind of enjoy working with young entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs and get out of the corporate world. Coaching and counseling has been my mainstay over the last decade, and I just enjoy doing it. And thankfully, I've been somewhat successful doing so.
How did you find out about franchising and this type of business model?
I worked, I should say I worked. I was fortunate enough to deal with a guy named Mike Blackwell. At the time, I believe he was the CEO of Cold Stone Creamery. And I ran into him on a golf course in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I was telling him kind of, what I want to do. And this was, almost 20 years ago now. And what I want to do, what I'm looking to do, what I enjoy. And it was just throughout 18 rounds. And he just kind of sat back and said, man, you might like the franchise space. And so the more we talked about it at the 19th hole and had a few drinks, he invited me over that Monday to spend some time with him at the Cold Stone Creamery corporate headquarters off the 101 in Scottsdale. And we hit it off. And he showed me. I listened to the sales staff. I listened to legal. I sat in on a few meetings. He just really took me under his wing, and I kind of fell in love with franchising and went, wait a minute. So if I can create a business, help entrepreneurs continue to grow and show them how to exit for a decent multiple, gosh, this might be something I'm worth doing. So I jumped into franchising.
And why did you decide to change industries? Was it just curiosity and these other spaces?
Man, I get bored so quick. That's the problem. My family comes from a more of a restaurant background. So Uncle Vito's Pizzeria, my first franchise, was the easy one to go into. I knew the industry, specifically pizza and restaurants. And so I decided to start franchising that. And then I kind of looked around and said, okay, what's the next market? I looked at 65 and older, communities and went, wait a minute, this is, they're turning, what is there, 20,000 people turning 65 every day. And people can't afford to go into these high-end facilities and they want to stay in their home. So let me see if I can make a franchise out of this. And of course, there were already people in the space. So it was a lot of what are they doing well and what can we do better? And then the bio industry, kind of the same thing. The bio industry was something unique in the sense of somebody had told me one time, this is an industry that just can't be franchised. And I just exited.
It's a good question.
Really?
I kind of know, given the context, what is bio for the audience?
Oh, bio is a crime scene cleaning franchise. So it's, unfortunately, suicides, decompositions, drug labs, if you will. And so the bio space is anything that had to do with with the body. Again, all the bad things in life that nobody wants to talk to or talk about. I mean, who wants to talk about death? And it's an industry that's morbid but necessary. And I was talking to a guy out in South Carolina, and he said, "Oh, these kind of businesses can't be franchised." And again, me just exiting some businesses, I went, "Why not?" And so I decided to do that. And I spent a decade doing that and sold that a few years back. And in 2016, I looked at the natural just transition into restoration was when in the bio industry, the guys would go out and rip out the floors and the baseboards and sometimes the drywall, and we would hire restoration companies at the time to come take care of the rebuild. And what was happening was our franchisees were really helping the families out and doing something that they shouldn't be doing themselves, something that they mentally shouldn't be doing themselves. And the restoration company would come in behind the old franchise, and they were giving my franchisees a bad name because they were no customer service. They just wanted to come in, get the job done, and move on, and they weren't thinking about the traumatic situation that just happened, could have been weeks before that in that specific room. So I got tired of that around 2016 and said, look, I'm going to create a franchise system that actually cares about people, that takes their time, that puts customer service much higher than it is now, making it almost the extreme opposite of what we've seen. So Best Option Restoration was born out of necessity to strengthen and essentially make the industry, just prettier. And so I wanted to build a better mousetrap, and that's exactly what we did.
So besides servicing the bio type clients, what other type of clients does B.O.R service?
Oh, we're for the most part. I mean, in the bio space is now such a minimal thing that we do as far as servicing them, because Best Option Restoration doesn't get into the bio side. They're truly fire, water, and mold, and we're actually getting into asbestos and roofing as well now. So I mean, our main people are the insurance companies, insurance agents, whether captive or independent agents that have portfolio work. We deal with a lot of plumbers, multifamily, 65 and older communities, and HOAs. That's the people that we service on the regular. It's for us. In restoration, there's really two. There's two, the big companies out there, the big green vans. I mean, those big guys, they love commercial. They love commercial work, and they're built for it. They have the network. They have the contacts for it. They teach their franchises to go for that commercial work. We stay in the suburbs. We stay in the residential world. There's a lot of restoration companies out there, but we're not all chasing the same dollar. So just because you see a lot of restoration companies in your space, a franchisee, I talk to them all the time, that's, candidates that say, oh gosh, there's 17 restoration companies when I Google. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean we're all doing the same stuff. If you type in, insurance agents, there's boating insurance agents, there's, large loss insurance agents, there's health insurance agents. You type in insurance agents, yeah, you got a broad stroke, you're going to get a ton of people. But in the
It's kind of
restoration
similar to
space,
pizza.
there's truly
Little Caesars is known for being cheap, Domino's for their tech. Was it
right.
Papa John's for being fast? Everyone's kind
Everyone
of
has
known
their
for
own
a
niche, 100%.
And so we just don't understand this as much because from a consumer perspective, like the average person can relate more to, pizza given the experience. And, you know, God forbid you do go through a restoration, hopefully it's not something that's top of mind and you're doing all the time.
Right. So when they're, when a candidate's looking at, do I get into restoration, and they see all those other companies, they just really have to realize that a lot of companies are in restoration, but there's specialties, and we just specialize in residential and suburbs.
And what's the advantage of going with a B.O.R franchise compared to someone just opening up their own restoration business?
I get that all the time, and I tell people we know in the franchise space what you don't know right now. I mean, we just know things. We have the experience on our side. Trying to start a restoration franchise or a restoration company, you can. People do it every day. That's also the ones that generally fail. We haven't had a franchise fail for a reason. And I will tell you, I think the strongest argument that I can give is the in with the insurance companies. Now, most restoration companies that do go out of business, the mom and pops at least, go out of business because they can't get paid and they're not sure how to deal with the insurance companies because they're not registered with them. And if you're not with the insurance companies, the ones that actually pay you, it makes it really hard to get paid because the insurance companies can kind of bully you around and drag their feet on paying you. When you're with a franchise, a national franchise, and this is the big guys or guys like us that have 60 some odd units, and when you're with the insurance companies, there's a communication channel there that we get things paid and we get them paid fast. We don't have to wait 90 days for a paycheck. One of the questions that I get from candidates all the time is, well, is it really hard? I mean, I hear it's just really hard getting paid by the insurance company. Well, for the mom and pop, it is. It really is. For a franchise, it shouldn't be. We have channels straight to the insurance companies.
So this is like analogous to doctors, how you have a lot of doctors grouping together and having like a pot of like 500 doctors, where 30 years ago it might just be like 3 or 4.
Right.
And it's because of the insurance,
right.
Negotiating with insurance, getting better terms, payouts.
Yeah, and speed. I mean, overall, it's speed.
What's the account receive? How long does it take to get paid? If you see like mom and pops, maybe like 60, 90 plus days, like how about for one of your franchisees?
Our facts are pretty simple. If it's under $20,000, then you'll be paid in less than 30 days. If it's over $20,000, then you'll be paid generally in about 60 days. And the reason why is just because the higher the invoice goes, which makes sense, the more eyes have to see it. So 20,000 and under, gosh, they're paid pretty quickly. Just the normal pay cycle, about 30 days. 20,000 and over, it could go to 60, and it's just because it pops up to that senior adjuster level. But for a mom and pop, their average invoice could be 60 to 90 days, and unfortunately, a lot of people get into business without that, without really a strong stream of operating capital, and they just don't have that. They just can't wait.
Nick Anthony, what do you do with to kind of prep your franchisees? Because I imagine a lot of them are first time business owners,
Right.
or they were dealing with a less sophisticated business where they were selling pizzas or whatever. You get paid right away, super low ticket.
Right.
How do you kind of coach them for financial aptitude as well as maybe relationships with lenders or whatever to manage that
Well, I
cash flow?
mean, for me, I mean, I'm very clear on you have, I mean, if the franchise costs, let's say $175,000, you better have at least $25,000 of operating capital. I don't want anybody to run this on a shoestring budget. So I need to make sure that they have the reality of capital, which is at least 25,000. And that's if they're owner or operator. If they're going to be an executive model, they better have 55 to $60,000 operating capital, because you're just going to have expenses that you wouldn't normally have if you're owner or operator. I mean, there's a lot more overhead. So we coach them in the very beginning, just in the qualifying phone calls, and get an idea of how they're going to operate, how they plan on operating. And then we coach them throughout the whole process of, here's what you're going to need to do. Here's what you need. Make sure you have this. Now, I'll be very honest. We don't police it. We just tell them what to have. We don't, I'm not, I'm against people saying, and some franchises do this. I just don't do this. I'm against franchises saying, show me show me that bank receipt, like a bank. Show me that you have the money. We tell you, here's what you need, man to man. Here's what you need. If you have it, I'm just going to believe that you have it. I mean, I don't think you're lying to me, because I tell you, if you don't have it, here's what can happen. So we want to make sure, a lot of it is coaching and counseling, literally from the first phone call.
And I know, I mean, talking to many, many franchisees, that a lot of the best parts of being a franchisee is kind of the community that's fostered between the fellow franchisees. And how do you foster that? How do you cultivate the community and kind of the shared learning so it isn't top down where it's franchisees helping each other out and bring themselves up?
Yeah, I mean, we have I mean, many ways, but one of the best ways is our mentorship program. So we have franchises mentor other franchises, and there are senior franchises, guys that have been in there at least 5 years, at least $3 million producers per unit. We want to make sure that we match new guys up with people that have been in their shoes. Because anyone that comes to me, I mean, every franchise, I haven't had, well, let me say it this way. I haven't had one franchise to have any restoration experience that has ever come to me. They've all been salesmen or bankers or private equity guys, or they've all been guys that have come to me that have said, I don't want to work. If I'm going to work 40 to 60 hours for somebody, it's going to be for myself. And they don't have any experience. So I'm not looking for experience. I'm not looking for a resume to become in the franchise. Give me somebody that really wants to be an entrepreneur and that's coachable. If you give me those two things, I got you from there. Just listen. And so in the system, we want to make sure that we match new franchises up with the senior franchises that can hold their hand every step of the way. We also have monthly Zoom calls with all the franchise group to make sure that everyone can share experiences. Hey, this marketing approach in Dallas worked. You might want to try it in Denver, or Denver might want to try it in Charlotte. And we talk about any adjustments in the insurance companies that people may not have seen, so we can get our billing department in here to talk about it. A constant support and hand holding up until the point, and I tell franchisees this all the time when they come aboard, we're going to hold your hand every step of the way until you tell us not to, because our job is to make sure that we provide every avenue for you to be successful as possible, as quick as possible. The number one thing we want you to do is make back your money. And thankfully, every franchise has done it within a year of owning the franchise. So we're very proud of that. And it's, a lot of that comes from the community support. We try to build an organic system that works on that, basically feeds on each other.
And I saw that in the synopsis of your book. It's Maverick Franchise,
Yeah, that was, yeah, that was one of the books. Yeah.
where it's like basically, yeah, get the business open and break even as soon as possible.
Right.
Where I
That
think
is the goal.
a lot of franchisors don't have that kind of level of empathy where it's like, okay, this person's going entrepreneurship for their first time.
Right.
If it's going to be a year, 2 years, that's really a mental drag. And there are businesses like that, like a preschool that's going to
Sure.
take time to construct and you're not going to make money. But
Right.
for a service related business, there aren't It's not like medical staffing where you have to get licensed. There's like really intensive licensure and time to open, et cetera. Like,
Well, I agree. I'll say that.
and what are some of the key items that you do to like employ basically get open, break even, and get your capital back? That 150 with 200, whatever you invested in the business, getting that back, or reinvesting it and opening up more territory should you want to.
Right. And that's generally what we try to talk to them about is there's two roads, making your money back and just staying with one where you're going to, you're kind of capping out at a certain level, about 800,000 per unit. I mean, right now, I think the last year was 786,000 on average per unit, or start investing, reinvesting in the company and start multiplying your efforts because, may have taken you 12 months, let's say, to get to a million. Your second one would probably take you 9 months. There's not a learning curve anymore. So it starts ramping up faster. It becomes exponential, growth. But one of the things that we talk about, and we're very, very serious about it, is please follow the plan. Don't reinvent the wheel. You bought a franchise, and I'm sure I mean, I know you've heard this in the franchise space before. The number one thing a franchisor will say, that harms a franchisee, makes him slow his growth, is by not following the plan or just trying to reinvent the wheel. You bought a successful model for a reason. And it is something, it doesn't happen to me very often because I'm pretty good at weeding people out. However, there are times when I have franchises aboard that will say, yes, okay, yes. And they'll go through training class. Yes, that makes total sense. And then they get home and they're not doing it. And our the franchise mentor will come to me and say, Nick, I don't know what to do with this guy. And because I'll have meetings with the mentors at least once a week, just to get a feel of how the new franchisees are doing. And I had one recently come to me and just say, I don't know what else I can do. And this guy was number one in the company. And he's like, they're just not listening to me. I'm not sure how to motivate these guys. So I had a phone call with that new franchisee, and there might have been some miscommunication between the senior franchise and him. So we will change mentors if we don't think it's a good fit. And so we did change mentors up, and they're doing okay now. But it was there are times where the senior mentors come to me and say, they're not listening. I'm not sure what to do. Uncle Nick, give me some advice. And so I'll step in at that point and do everything I can.
And Nick, a lot of, I imagine the training is on the actual operating of the business, but how about on the technician level and the employees and sourcing the employees, training the employees? How does B.O.R help?
Well, we've teamed up with basically employment agencies, whether they be skilled employment agencies or just labor employment agencies. So we can hand over people ready to go that are trained techs in this field to a franchise. So that's not really ever a problem for us because of the connections that we've made. In class, though, we're very big about training the franchisee to train their people in the event that they don't want to go to that employment agency. Because, I mean, we know an employment agency is great in the sense of you'll have people that are skilled or non-skilled, depending on what you're looking for, but you're paying a premium for them. And, it does eat into operating capital and upfront. So we try to train the franchisees to train their own people. And we invite franchisees to come back and bring their general managers through training class. And it doesn't cost them anything. Once a franchisee is aboard, we do everything we can to try to help them get started. And if they want to send or bring their general manager, fantastic. Bring them. They'll learn it. We always tell them they're going to learn everything you're going to know. So make sure this is a guy that's going to stick with you because they're going to learn. I mean, we're going to treat them like a franchise. We're going to learn everything. But I think that's been key in helping young franchisees actually retain good people. There's not a lot of attrition rate. We don't have a very high attrition rate in our franchise group because I think of the way we've taught our franchisees to not only look for people, but nurture them throughout their career.
And Nick, tell me a little bit about what your plans are for 2024. I understand you might be expanding outside the US.
We were thinking about it. We've had a lot of interest. That's what I can say. Whether it's Canada, the UK, Australia, Brazil, we've had a lot of interest, and I haven't made that decision yet if we're going to move that direction. There's so much room in the United States right now. I don't know if there's a reason to expand just yet. We've talked about it. We've kicked it around. I've had meetings with attorneys and brokers, and I just don't know. I will tell you this. We brought on 32 franchises last year. We've already brought on 14, or I guess 18 now for this year. We plan on bringing on, probably by the end of 2024, we'll have brought on another 35. And so we'll be hovering right around that 100 mark. In the event that we decide to move forward and go international, in my opinion, it's probably going to be after we hit that 100 mark. So it may not happen till 2025, maybe into 2026, because again, there's so much room here in the United States to go abroad might just be biting off a little more than we can chew.
Sure. And I'm sure, there's some relationships with the insurance companies that will cross over borders, but other times that you'd have to build it, from zero or near zero.
Right. And right now, what we don't want to do is, I always tell people, I'm not going to take your money. I'm not going to waste your money or waste my time if I'm not confident that I can do what I say I'm going to do.
And then how do you go about in terms of like planning for the territories? So say, you have 100 franchisees, like how many territories are they managing?
Generally, I mean, 20% of our company, or I guess 25% of our company, own multiple territories. And the way a territory works with us is they start with a zip code, and then we just kind of build out from there. So it's not predetermined, carved out territories. We have an idea of how many locations we can have in a given area, like Denver. We have 9 locations here in Denver. That's about all that we can fit. We're pretty much sold out of Denver. So a major market can hold, average territory is between 2 and 300,000 people. And we carve it out based on zip code. So an average market like Denver, and that's not LA or New York. Those aren't average markets. An average market like Denver could probably hold, 7 to 11 franchises, depending on how big their their basically their geography is, and how much urban sprawl has happened. Like in Chicago, there's the whole Chicagoland area, and then you go all the way out. You can go all the way out west to Naperville. It's still Chicago, but it's not really the Chicago metro area anymore. Now it's Naperville. So it really depends on how big the area is. But an average area we can look at and say it's probably seven to 11 franchises can go in a metro area.
And then I'm sure it really depends a lot on how someone's running a restoration business, whether they're a true owner operator working 40, 60 hours a week or significantly less across different territories. But any idea in terms of like the industry margins and what the profit margins look like?
Oh, sure. I mean, and it varies, but I can tell you, what we've seen is their margins are going to be in the high 60 percentiles. They're cash flowing in the mid 50s if they're owner operator. There's just because there's not a lot of overhead. There's just not. All the machines they own. So it's not like they're renting machines and having a much overhead. The biggest overhead is labor at anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour per person. But if they're running executive model where they're just kind of shaking hands, kissing babies, maybe going to a job site to check on somebody, if they're truly the executive model, they're going to run cash flowing in the mid 40s. But still extremely strong.
Yeah, it sounds like that compared to the pizza business or some
Yeah,
other businesses
yeah.
that
Where
you
margins
control.
were 12%, they were cash flowing about 6. Yeah, it was definitely much better.
Nick, is there anything that we didn't go through today that you think be relevant for people looking to get into entrepreneurship through owning a franchise?
In my opinion, Patrick, I tell people this all the time, and I truly mean it. Nothing happens as fast as you want it to. Even our franchise. Yes, people have made their money back in under a year, and most of all of them have. However, as an entrepreneur, we make these big, big plans, and they're all pie in the sky, like nothing's going to go wrong. I was coaching an entrepreneurship program in our local high school. I was one of the coaches, and I saw all these young 16, 17-year-old business plans, and man, every numbers were just straight through the roof. And one of the things that I asked these guys, these young entrepreneurs, these young minds, was, so what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when you don't have it built into where when you lose a client? What happens then? Because your numbers are just based on, well, 1 equals 2 and 2 equals 4 and 4 equals. I'm like, that's not business. There's entrepreneurship, guys. It's not a straight line. It's a lot of this, and they didn't think about that. So as an entrepreneur, any entrepreneur or future entrepreneur on this, listening to this, understand that it takes time and there's no straight lines. There's going to be up, downs, sideways, zoo. It's going to go crazy on you. However, if you have a solid plan and a solid leadership or a solid group of people that you can trust to go to give, take advice outside of the circle, you're going to be all right. But trust me, there's going to be nights that you were staring up at the ceiling and you can't sleep and you say, what did I do? Okay, that's normal. Okay, that's completely normal. Everyone, I've done it. Everyone does it. Know that you're not alone, and it works if you work. But you can't sit on your hands and think things are going to come to you. You got to work every single day.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My neighbor told me at age 24 when I was thinking about starting our business that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Every day.
And I still think about that a lot. Nick, what's the best way for people to get in contact if they're looking to potentially open a Best Option Restoration of B.O.R franchise?
I always tell people, go to the website, BORestoration.com, or they can always email, and it goes straight to the sales department, info@BORestoration.com.
Nick Anthony, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, buddy.